Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma is one of 13 Republican senators asking the Justice Department to pause the separation of families while Congress works on a solution. He's inside the U.S. Capitol for an interview you'll see only on CBS This Morning. Senator, good morning.
Good morning to you.
I know you have joined some of your Republican colleagues in asking the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, to move on this immediately. Is it your understanding that the Attorney General could change this with a stroke of a pen?
I do think he could change it with a stroke of the pen. It was a stroke of the pen that actually changed to this. It could change back on it. The issue is, do we allow individuals to be able to choose voluntary return, keep the family together while they're making a decision? If they choose voluntary return, then they can return back before charges are actually filed. What's called the Flores settlement, where it separates families and forcibly separates families due to that settlement, only kicks in once charges have been filed. So our request is just delay when you're filing charges, give the families time to be able to make a decision. If they're not seeking asylum, they were trying to be able to cross the border illegally, then they're given that opportunity to be able to return as a family.
I know senators don't just sign petitions and letters. You also pick up the phone. Have you spoken with the Justice Department? Have you spoken with the Attorney General directly about this?
I have actually spoken with the Secretary of DHS, Secretary Nielsen. She and I have had a good conversation about this as they're trying to be able to work it together. The default position, I believe, should be that families stay together. And that's the default. There should be exceptions to that, as there always have been, but the default is families stay together.
What about asylum seekers who don't come in through ports of entry, Senator? What would happen to them?
So that is a bigger challenge. Asylum seekers should seek asylum at a port of entry. That's the spot that people, if they know they're going to request asylum, they can go. They're not violating the law. Secretary Nielsen has been very clear that if you're seeking asylum, go to a port of entry. Don't try to illegally cross the border in the open area. And then once you get into the country, then declare asylum, because it makes it much more complicated for people. They don't know whether you're seeking asylum or you're trying to illegally cross. The challenge is, at that point, they have to get people to a spot to be able to determine if they qualify quickly for asylum, and then make the decision from there, and it slows down the process dramatically.
So it sounds like what you're talking about wouldn't change the family separation with asylum seekers. But let me ask you a question quickly about MS-13. You're on the Homeland Security Committee. The president has said these family separations are necessary to protect against MS-13. Is there any evidence you've seen anywhere ever that families have MS-13 members as a part of them when they're separated?
Not that I have seen. There is a very real threat of MS-13 moving into the country, and what we've typically seen is unaccompanied minors when they're coming to the country. Once they get a placement and they're somewhere in the country waiting on a notice to appear or waiting on some kind of adjudication, that they get scooped up by people that may be MS-13 already in the country and try to recruit them in. That is a very real threat, and we do have a very real threat of individuals crossing our border that have terrorism connections and other human trafficking connections. So it is a tough, complicated area.
But just to be clear, that's a totally separate issue from these families.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Have you heard anything, Senator, about where the girls are being held? We've been asking. We were in Texas for the past couple of days. It's been asked repeatedly. We're not getting any answers about where the girls and the younger children are being held. Do you have any answer about that?
I do not have an answer directly about that.
That'd be good to be able to ask
HHS. Well, getting clarity from HHS right now has been tough. They've been very quiet about how they're doing processing. But I don't mean to look back on this, but President Obama, when we had the surge of unaccompanied minors coming in 2014, they put up several facilities very quickly, military bases and other spots to be able to put unaccompanied minors. We were not allowed access to those locations unannounced either. And there was a lot of challenges at that point where HHS was working with individual contractors to be able to put up facilities. I do think, and I have shared with the administration, as much transparency as possible helps everyone to be able to get answers to questions and to be able to look at it. We are a government of the people, by the people, for the people. The people want to be able to get basic answers, and that's a very reasonable request.
All right, Senator Lankford, thanks so much for being with us.
Sure, thank you.
Dramatic